I grew up believing that loyalty was the bedrock of any strong friendship. When I was little, I shared secrets and treasured dreams with the girl who lived right across the street. We vowed never to turn on each other, and I held onto that promise well into adulthood. So when I got engaged to the love of my life, I assumed my best friend would be my bridesmaid and confidant. I had no idea how much I would regret offering her a front-row seat to my plans. Early on, I told her everything about my chosen venue, a stunning Victorian estate with a flower-strewn garden, a sweeping staircase in the foyer, and a glass-walled reception hall that caught every last ray of daylight. That estate became the symbol of my perfect day, and I'd saved for months to secure the deposit. Yet weeks later, I felt an odd rush of dread when the estate manager called to say my reservation was unexpectedly cancelled due to double booking. Suspicious flickers gnawed at me, but I tried to ignore them, until I discovered who had mysteriously scooped up my date, my so-called best friend. My hands shook and my teeth clenched so tight I thought they might crack. I confronted her, and she just tossed her hair, as if I were the silly one. She said it was an incredible coincidence, swearing she never intended to cause trouble. She even suggested I choose a different date, like I was the afterthought at my own celebration. My fiancé watched me drift around the house like a stunned ghost. I'd put so much care into that venue, the deposit was non-refundable, but the manager insisted there was a clause in the contract about unforeseen scheduling errors, meaning I only got half back. She was unapologetic. Apparently, my friend had come in right after me, offering to pay more if she could finalize a higher package on that exact weekend. The manager had quietly gone along, making some feeble excuse about having to prioritize bigger expenditures. My friend, let's call her Chloe, smiled a little too brightly when I challenged her. She never outright admitted she'd outbid me, but I saw the flicker of triumph dancing in her eyes. My stomach knotted in anger and betrayal. I wanted to scream, but I bit my lip and tried, for a moment, to salvage any trace of goodwill. I calmly asked if we could share the venue, maybe shift times. But she clutched the newly signed contract as if it were a trophy, offering only lukewarm sympathy about my predicament. Swallowing my pride, I sought out a different space. I toured dull banquet halls and cramped community centers, but everything felt so second-rate, especially compared to the estate I'd set my heart on. Every alternative reminded me that the person I'd trusted most had beaten me to my own dream. Finally, I found a small vineyard on the outskirts of town. It wasn't as grand, and I had to juggle the date to fit their availability, but at least I had something. My fiancé did his best to keep me focused on our own day. He rubbed my arms gently when I woke in the middle of the night, feeling so furious my hands shook. Still, I couldn't let go of the anger at Chloe's betrayal. She told mutual friends that I was overreacting, that weddings are stressful, and I was just being dramatic. Yet each time I saw her flaunting her new booking on social media, winking about her perfect spot, I felt that hot coil of resentment tighten in my core. Of course, a rational person might have let it go, focusing on the marriage rather than the day. But I'm only human, and each time Chloe boasted about her upcoming ceremony, I felt my temper ignite. I wasn't interested in petty revenge at first, I simply wanted an apology, or an admission. Instead, she brushed off my hurt like it was a minor inconvenience. Then she had the audacity to invite me to her wedding, as if nothing had happened. She made it all about flaunting her wealth, her cunning, her unstoppable ability to get what she wanted. My fiancé tried to encourage me to release the frustration, but my hands wouldn't stop trembling when I thought of how she snatched the very date and location we'd pored over together. Watching her spin the narrative so that I looked jealous, that was the last straw. I spent night after night turning possibilities over in my mind, teetering between guilt and craving some sense of justice. That's when I decided I would find a way, an underhanded way perhaps, to ensure her wedding day wasn't the fairy tale she envisioned. I felt a pang of shame at stooping so low, but the adrenaline of that betrayal wouldn't let me sleep. I scrolled through legal blogs, reading about breach of contract, about defamation suits, about sabotage, trying to figure out how far I could push without risking my own future. Meanwhile, Chloe was busy shining up her image, inviting guests with sleek, engraved envelopes that she bragged had cost her a small fortune. My phone buzzed with group texts about her lavish plans. Every message was like a thorn in my side, fueling my determination to strike back. Blank days turned into hollow weeks, and the final tipping point came when I learned that she'd been telling people our friendship was over because I was too unstable. I shook so hard my fiancé had to pry the phone from my fingers. That night, after he finally dozed off, I crept into our tiny home office. I pulled up my laptop and scoured the estate's website, searching for vulnerabilities in her big day. I found them quickly. The caterer had a strict policy about final headcount confirmation. The flowers had to be paid in full a month in advance, or else they'd resell that date. There were also local noise ordinance regulations. If complaints were filed past a certain hour, the city could shut down the entire event. I felt a wave of unsteady excitement. Maybe it wasn't moral. But she started this. If she wanted a lavish wedding on the day she stole, I was going to make it as complicated as humanly possible. Still, I wasn't an expert in sabotage. I needed more than rumor and luck. So I contacted a lawyer friend, but I disguised my motives by pretending I was worried about my own wedding. I asked about what happens if two parties book the same venue, and if there could be a breach of contract or monetary damages. She explained that the estate's manager had carefully covered themselves by citing a rare scheduling conflict, so legally, I'd face an uphill battle. I'd already accepted I wouldn't get my deposit back, not fully. But it reassured me to learn that if Chloe had known she was interfering with my contract, I might potentially claim tortious interference. My mind lit up with ideas. Maybe I could file a formal complaint, drag her into a legal quagmire. But that would require money, time, and proof that she acted maliciously. Proving malicious intent in court can be tricky. My friend said it often boils down to documents, emails, or text messages that explicitly show wrongdoing. I had no smoking gun. I sat back and thought of a different angle. Legally, maybe my hands were tied unless I wanted to sink thousands of dollars into attorney's fees. But I could still disrupt her wedding in more subtle ways. I called the estate manager from a burner phone, pretending to be from the local city department. I politely reminded them that the entire property would be inspected the week of the wedding for compliance. My voice wavered, but I forced calm authority. I added that any local noise complaints or suspicious activity might lead to immediate closure. I heard her voice hitch in concern. The next day, I heard from a mutual acquaintance who worked at the estate that they were now hyper-alert about permit compliance. If there was so much as a single disturbance, they'd have to cut the event short to avoid fines. That was step one. But as the day of her wedding drew closer, something unexpected happened that nearly derailed my plan. Chloe got wind that I had been quietly consulting attorneys. The first I knew of it was when I came home to find a certified letter in my mailbox. Inside, there was a formal request from her lawyer's office to cease any defamatory or harassing behavior. My heart raced, and my knees nearly buckled. So she had a legal team at the ready. I skimmed the letter, heat prickling the back of my neck. It mentioned potential civil claims if I continued to undermine her wedding. I sank onto the couch, cheeks burning. She wasn't just some naive bride waiting to be ambushed, she was prepared to fight back. My fiancé asked what was wrong, and all I could do was hand him the letter, my hand shaking so badly I could hardly keep hold of the page. That night, I couldn't eat. My stomach churned just thinking about the financial ruin if she sued me. Yet somewhere in that swirl of panic, I felt a savage thrill. My best friend, who'd once fed me gummy bears while we watched cartoons, was threatening me with lawyers. It was so surreal I almost laughed. I paced until dawn, deciding whether to back down. But as the sun rose, a calm determination settled in my gut. If I gave up now, her wedding day would be perfect. She'd win without consequences. My heart pounded with the conviction that I couldn't let that happen. So I decided to adapt. Instead of direct sabotage, I'd pull strings from a distance, leaving no trace. I knew Chloe's florist had a strict policy about final payment by a certain date. If a payment was a single day late, they reserved the right to cancel. Her deposit was only half, and the remainder was sizable. So I made a carefully timed call to the florist, disguising my voice again, claiming to be Chloe's wedding coordinator. I said there'd been an issue with the bank and that final payment might be delayed by a few days. The florist sounded uneasy, repeating the policy. I feigned frustration, insisted we'd pay soon, then hung up. Next, I knew the city wouldn't take kindly to the suspicion of under-the-table gratuities for local officials. So I dropped an anonymous tip at the local planning commission, suggesting that the estate might be violating capacity rules. A friend who worked at City Hall texted me about an abrupt interest in checking maximum occupancy for events at the estate. Meanwhile, I was careful not to create any direct link to me. I used only untraceable messaging apps. But Chloe wasn't idle. She must have sensed the subtle storms gathering. About a week before her wedding, her father, an imposing man with deep pockets, sent me a flurry of texts demanding to know if I was behind these sudden challenges. He said if I continued, he'd personally sue me for everything I had. My fingers trembled so hard that I dropped my phone. I stared at it on the floor, pulse roaring in my ears. In that moment, I felt real fear. I imagined losing my savings, my home, my fiancé's respect. Yet, there was also a cold, unstoppable rage inside me. I felt like if I retreated now, it would mean letting her walk all over me. I took another path. I secured a second lawyer, paying for just an hour of her time, to draft a letter in response. We denied all accusations, demanded that Chloe and her father cease harassing me, and threatened to countersue if they continued. It was a bluff, but it gave me a sense of security. My lawyer emphasized that such back-and-forth letter wars can escalate quickly. I needed to be absolutely certain there was no real evidence tying me to any sabotage. So I purged my phone of every suspicious note, double-checked my burner phone, and told a few friends I needed them to keep any idle chatter about me under wraps. My hands felt clammy, but I was in too deep to turn back. The day of Chloe's wedding approached like a thundercloud, heavy with tension. My fiancé watched me quietly, occasionally asking if we could just let it be. But I'd gone too far down the road of retribution. I swore I'd stop once the wedding was done, once she experienced a fraction of the disappointment she'd caused me. We learned from a mutual friend that the estate had been forced to adjust the noise curfew time window after a neighbor complained of potential disturbances. This meant that the reception had to end an hour earlier than planned. I caught myself smirking when I read that text, though guilt flickered in my chest. On the morning of her wedding, I waited for any sign of how things were unfolding. Around noon, rumors started trickling in that Chloe's florist had cancelled, apparently, that final payment never arrived on time, and they didn't budge on policy. The florist took another wedding contract at the last minute. Word spread that Chloe's father had tried to strong-arm them with legal threats, but the florist stuck to the contract's terms. I placed my phone on the table, feeling the slightest tremor in my fingers, as I tried to process the surge of relief and triumph washing over me. A few hours later, pictures surfaced from some early arrivals. The ceremony was missing the lavish floral display she'd bragged about, replaced by cheap arrangements from a grocery store. Then came the next wave of chaos. The city unexpectedly showed up to verify the estate's guest count. People were forced to line up and sign in so the staff could record attendance, fracturing the smooth flow of the day. By evening, I heard that several guests complained about the forced check-in, and the tension was thick enough to taste. My phone buzzed relentlessly with texts from mutual friends, describing the meltdown unfolding. I felt a shiver of satisfaction down my spine, remembering the painful sting of losing my deposit, losing my perfect day, and how she'd gloated so openly. Still, I braced myself for her to appear at my door, raging. But the hours ticked by, and she never showed. Late into the night, I heard that the music had been cut off early after yet another noise complaint, and the wedding ended on a sour note. People apparently left in droves. I sat on my couch, hugging my knees, heart thudding. My fiancé sat beside me, gently running a hand along my back. He asked if I was satisfied now. My eyes stung, tears threatening to spill. I managed a hollow nod, unsure whether I felt victorious or just profoundly sad. The next morning, I got the text I'd been dreading and expecting in equal measure. Chloe wanted to talk. We met in a parking lot near a bakery, her face drawn and set with an anger I'd never witnessed before. She didn't greet me. Her jaw was clenched, her eyes rimmed red. She demanded to know why I'd ruined her wedding. My chest felt tight, but I didn't own up to anything. I simply told her I had no idea what she was talking about. She threatened lawsuits, demanded I confess. But I just stood there. My silence, my faint half-smile, it was enough to confirm her suspicions. She let out a bitter laugh that cracked in the chilly morning air, saying she finally saw who I really was. My teeth pressed together so hard I felt a stab of pain. After everything she'd done, she still tried to twist it so I was the villain. I shook my head, told her we were done. She stormed off without another word. It's been a few months since that confrontation, and my own wedding at the vineyard is fast approaching. The memory of her betrayal still burns, but so does the look on her face when her day collapsed. Legally, I haven't received any lawsuits. Apparently, her father realized that any serious legal fight would require solid evidence of my interference, which they don't have. I heard through the grapevine that Chloe suspects a few vendors or local officials, spinning conspiracy theories about people who wanted her to fail. Sometimes I feel a twist of guilt. But then I remember how she brushed me aside when I pleaded to keep that estate, how she ridiculed my heartbreak and painted me as an unstable friend. I suppose we both lost something precious. Our trust, our bond from childhood, the sense that we would always have each other's backs. Now, when I walk through the vineyard, finalizing details for my own ceremony, I should be focused on the future, yet part of me can't help replaying the moment I learned she'd hijacked my venue. My fingers curl into fists even now. But I tell myself it's better this way. We've severed ties and moved on. Maybe I'm changed by what I did, maybe I'll always carry that moral ambiguity within me. I've learned that betrayal cuts deep, and sometimes we strike back in ways we never expected we could. My fiancé has offered his forgiveness for the secrets I've kept, for the bitterness that drove me. He just wants to move forward. So do I. But at night, I sometimes see that flicker in my mind of Chloe's face, shocked, panicked, and humiliated, and I wonder if that final image will stay with me forever. I know one thing, you can't just steal someone's dream and walk away smiling. Actions have consequences. And while I've locked away my regret in a quiet corner of my soul, I've also come to accept that it's a lesson learned the hard way. I'll marry the man I love, in a place that may not be as grand as the Victorian estate, but that still means the world to me. It won't be overshadowed by old bitterness, at least, that's what I keep promising myself. As for Chloe, she'll always be the friend who stabbed me in the back, the one I had to outmaneuver. Maybe she'll heal, maybe she'll plot her own revenge, or maybe we'll never see each other again. In the end, I'm not sure any of it matters. What matters is that I rediscovered just how far I was willing to go to protect my dreams when the person closest to me tore them away. And although that knowledge comes with a pang of shame, it's now a part of me. I only hope it never resurfaces again. A few days ago, I opened a plain white envelope in my mailbox, expecting it to be another vendor receipt, or an update from our caterer. Instead, I found a letter from the estate manager. Apparently, after the fiasco at Chloe's wedding, the estate incurred fines and negative publicity. The manager wrote me a brief note explaining how sorry she was about the earlier scheduling conflict, referencing how devastating these unexpected issues can be for all parties involved. She didn't outright say it, but I had the sense she was fishing for me to publicly absolve the estate of wrongdoing, to separate them from the chaos at Chloe's event. I tore the letter up and threw it away without responding. Some doors, once slammed shut, should stay that way. In moments of reflection, I let myself feel the full weight of what happened. My heart still pounds with the memory of that sudden phone call when the venue manager told me my reservation was gone. I can still recall the blood roaring in my ears, the disbelief that my best friend had blindsided me. I remember the helplessness of not knowing how to fight back legally, the sinking realization that I had no choice but to watch her prance off with my dream venue. But the me of that time has vanished, replaced by someone who fought tooth and nail, crossing moral lines in the process. If I could say one thing to my younger self, it would be that no wedding is worth losing your soul. And yet, that same younger self might scoff and argue that no friend is worth losing your dream day. I don't know if there's a moral to this story. Maybe it's that love can drive people to do ugly things, or that betrayal cracks something deep inside that can't easily be mended. Or maybe it's simply that sometimes, the measure of how much we want something is revealed by how far we are willing to go. I will stand at the altar soon, holding my fiancé's hands beneath the soft glow of early evening sun, with rolling rows of grapevines behind us. It may not be the glass-walled reception hall I originally envisioned, but I can look around that simple vineyard with an uncluttered heart, because I made sure my voice was heard, one way or another. Even if the path I chose was an ugly one, it led me to a closure Chloe never expected I'd find. We don't speak anymore, and I've blocked her number. Some nights, I'm tempted to check her social media just to see if she's posted anything about me. But I can't bring myself to open that door again. I'd rather leave her with the broken pieces of her big day, let her wonder forever if it was just bad luck, or if I carefully orchestrated each mishap from the sidelines. Life moves on, and maybe someday I'll forgive her, or forgive myself. For now, I lock that memory away, comforted by the knowledge that I reclaimed the sense of power she tried to strip from me. And while I'm not proud of every step I took, I am certain of one thing: no one will ever steal my dream again without paying a price.